Welcome back. Before we start, let me tell you a little bit about myself. And I would love for you to write to me and tell me about yourselves too. When I was about 2 years old, the doctors discovered that I was deaf and told my parents that I had been deaf since birth. And when I was about 11, I developed a condition called retinitis pigmentosa. RP causes tunnel vision and night blindness. And another condition, Usher syndrome, is a combination of retinitis pigmentosa and deafness. And now I'm a deafblind actress.
I just love going to the zoo. Oh, there's an endless variety of exotic animals. It seems like every imaginable animal lives here. What are we going to visit today?
The elephant. There's just no doubt about it. The elephant is amazing to me. Why, it's the very largest animal that lives on land, and there's just no animal that's bigger. And that nose of the elephant, sort of like a combination between a vacuum cleaner, an extra arm, and a trumpet. Oh, that noise! I don't think I'd want to be around an elephant when it comes around sneezing. Oh, no! And can you imagine an elephant having a cold up its nose? Let's ask our friend Kim to tell us about the elephant.
Kim, what you were standing up against is the largest land animal. They can be 8,000 pounds. In fact, our 3 girls that we have here range between 6,000, 7,000, and 8,000 pounds. A big bull or a male elephant can get up to as much as 15,000 pounds. Even though they're that big, they're very gentle to one another. They live in a family group where the cow or the female runs the group of animals and the bulls come in later on. They can use their trunk very well, very easy to use their trunk. They're being persecuted for their ivory. That is the tooth that you usually see that comes out of their mouth. They're being hunted for that. They are protected now, so you are not to have ivory jewelry, so it keeps the elephants alive. They can live up to 60 years. The baby elephants, the mother elephant carries them for about 22 months before she actually gives birth, and a baby elephant will weigh between 200 and 300 pounds. The elephants make a lot of noises and communicate with noises, and they also communicate almost silently. With recent research, it's shown that they communicate with one another in pitches or levels of noise that we can't even hear as humans. The elephants are wonderful animals. They are mammals. They're covered with hair, even though it's a very stiff hair, and you have to look a little hard to see the hair. They have eyelashes and hair on the tips of their tails. And one thing that you noticed, Kim, that you were feeding them was a type of chow. It's banana-flavored chow. Most people are very interested into how much the elephants do eat. We feed them hay here, we feed them grain, we feed them vegetables, grass, and a lot of water to keep them happy.
The elephant's trunk, what are the many uses?
Many times I think we think of looking at it as a hand, but it can also be used to pick up water. It can be used to pick up dust. It can even be used to spank the baby elephant. It can be used for communication. They can trumpet out of the trunk. They can pick things up as small as a dime. It's very flexible. They can use it to dig holes, dig water, to carry things, to lift things. Many, many uses. It's like having almost an extra arm or leg that they can use and utilize.
The elephant, are they really intelligent?
They're very, very intelligent. That's one of the reasons that the animal keepers, the elephant keepers, work with them every day so they do not get bored. It keeps them active, it keeps them alert, and it keeps them from getting bored so they won't hurt each other. They go through their paces, they give the elephant rides, they do demonstrations, they do something that we would think of would be a performance, but these are all things that they normally would do in the wild, and it's something to keep them occupied so they aren't just standing out here with people looking at them.
my goodness, it's so big, this elephant. This is really neat and a lot of fun riding it. Wow, I loved it. I just love riding the elephant. You want to go ride on some more? Wow.
I'm gonna that's the mouth. That's the tongue. That's the tongue. Yeah, that's the tongue. That's the tongue.
Snow skiing. Oh, how this hobby thrills me. The sensation of flying down a slope with the cool wind rushing against my face, making it tingle and making my heart aglow, feeling the sunshine too on my face, warming it when the cool breeze would make it cold. Inside my head, I can see the shininess of the mountain scenery, with the sunshine reflecting so bright on the snow, making everything a magical shimmery white. It's another feeling of being right on top of the world, at the top of a slope, waiting to rush down, whoosh, whoosh. And other sensations of touch too. The feeling of a snowflake landing on my cheek and the cold taste of a snowflake on my tongue. It all gives me wonderful chills and thrills. When you're skiing, your body and your spirit become so exhilarated and free and soaring as you swoop down the slopes. I love to snow ski. I like starting the day with good habits, getting up and having a good breakfast and heading straight to the gym to do exercise and aerobics with the teenagers. Exercise itself is really wonderful. It not only wakes up your body, but improves your mind and gives you energy for the day. Here's a couple of fun exercises you can do right along with my friends and I. All that you need to get is a rubbery, stretchy band that you can buy at a local sporting goods store. This exercise exercises two different muscle groups. As you can see, it's exercising the muscles across your chest, the pectoral muscles, and the muscles across your back, called the lats. Oh, and we gotta remember to keep our lower abs in. That's our tummies. There you go, you got it. Just follow along right with me. We're pushing forward and back, forward and back. You got it. Another fun exercise we can do is an exercise that exercises the tricep muscle. The tricep muscle is the muscle that goes along underneath our arm between the elbow and the end of the shoulder blade. And in this muscle, we're pushing up and down with the band and keeping our elbow right by our ear. Are you ready for this story that I'm about to tell you? Do you know what story this is by looking at my costume? Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This story is a favorite among children all over the world. The story is about a beautiful young girl who dealt with the jealousy of a vengeful, wicked queen. The jealousy of the wicked queen teaches us that there are bad things about jealousy. It can be dangerous, it can be a bad influence, and cause confusion. And jealousy can cause us to lose our friends, and we wouldn't want to do that because we value them so much. Well, a handsome prince comes along and rescues her. Are you ready? The story begins once upon a time. In a great castle lived a very pretty little girl with blue eyes and long black hair. Her skin was delicate and fair, and so she was called Snow White. She had a stepmother who was also very beautiful, but she was a wicked and jealous woman. Every day the stepmother would ask her magic mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the loveliest lady in the land?" The reply was always, "You are, your majesty," until the dreadful day when she heard it say, "Snow White is the loveliest in the land." Furious and wild with jealousy, she decided to find a way to get rid of Snow White. Calling on one of her servants, she ordered him to take Snow White into the forest and put her to death. The servant agreed, and he led the little girl away. However, when they came to the forest, the man took pity on Snow White, and leaving her sitting beside a tree, he mumbled an excuse and ran off. Night came, and Snow White, left alone in the dark forest, began to cry bitterly. She thought she could feel terrible eyes spying on her, and she heard strange sounds and rustlings that made her heart thump. At last, overcome by tiredness, she fell asleep, curled under a tree. Dawn woke the forest to the song of the birds, and Snow White too awoke. As she tried to find out where she was, she came upon a path. She walked along it until she came to a clearing. There stood a strange cottage with a tiny door, tiny windows, and a tiny chimney. Snow White pushed the door open. "I wonder who lives here," she said to herself. "There must be 7 of them. The table's laid for 7 people." Upstairs was a bedroom with 7 little beds. Going back to the kitchen, Snow White had an idea. "I'll make them something good to eat." Towards dusk, 7 tiny men marched homeward singing. When they opened the door, they were surprised to find a bowl of hot soup on the table and the whole house spick and span. Upstairs was Snow White, fast asleep on one of the beds. The chief dwarf prodded her gently. "Who are you?" he asked. Snow White told them her sad story, and tears sprang to the dwarf's eyes. Then one of them said, "Stay here with us." "Hooray, hooray!" they cheered, dancing joyfully round the little girl. The dwarf said to Snow White, "You can live here and tend to the house while we're down in the mine. We love you and we'll take care of you." Snow White gratefully accepted. Next morning, as the dwarf set off for work, they warned Snow White not to open the door to strangers. Meanwhile, the servant had returned to the castle with the heart of a deer. He gave it to the cruel stepmother, telling her it belonged to Snow White. Highly pleased, the stepmother turned to the magic mirror. "The loveliest in the land is still Snow White, who lives in the 7 dwarfs' cottage down in the forest. She must die!" she screamed, wild with rage. Disguising herself as an old peasant woman, she put a poisoned apple with the others in her basket. Then, taking the quickest way into the forest, she crossed the swamp and arrived at the cottage just as Snow White stood waving goodbye to the 7 dwarfs on their way to the mine. Snow White was in the kitchen when she heard the sound at the door. "Who's there?" she called. "I'm an old peasant woman selling apples," came the reply. "I don't need any apples, thank you," she replied. "But they are beautiful apples and ever so juicy," said the voice from outside the door. "I'm not supposed to open the door to anyone," said the little girl. "And quite right, too. Good girl. And as a reward for being good, I'm going to make you a gift of one of my apples." Without thinking, Snow White opened the door to take the apple. There, now isn't that a nice apple? Snow White bit into the fruit, and as she did, fell to the ground in a faint. The wicked stepmother hurried off, but as she ran back across the swamp, she tripped and fell into the quicksand. No one heard her cries for help, and she disappeared without a trace. Meanwhile, the dwarfs came out of the mine to find the sky had grown dark and stormy. Loud thunder echoed through the valleys, and streaks of lightning ripped the sky. Worried about Snow White, they ran as quickly as they could down the mountain to the cottage. There they found Snow White, lying still and lifeless, the poisoned apple by her side. They did their best to bring her round, but it was no use. They wept and wept for a long time. Then they laid her on a bed of rose petals, carried her into the forest, and put her in a crystal coffin. Each day they laid a flower there. Then one evening they discovered a young prince admiring Snow White's lovely face. "She's so lovely. I'd love to kiss her." He did, and as though by magic, the prince's kiss broke the spell. Amazingly, she came back to life. The prince asked Snow White to marry him, and the dwarfs had to say goodbye to Snow White. From that day on, Snow White lived happily in a great castle, but from time to time she came back to the little cottage to visit the 7 dwarfs. What a wonderful, fun day we've had together. I'm so glad you could join us, and we will be back real soon with new adventures to take us places, new animals to visit, and new dreams and stories to tell. You and I can become friends. Join us again next time. Come along to my world. So long for now. Love you.